Overload.
Hello and welcome to Planetary Overload. This is a bi-weekly podcast where we introduce you to new hobbies. Think of us like a starting point or a tutorial of where to start. Make sure to send this to your friends if you already take part in this hobby and want Pobby. Well, it looks like we're off to a rocky start now. We're a diamond in the rough, aren't we, Cole?
Oh, yes.
Well, if you didn't know, what is our podcast about today?
Our podcast is about amateur geology,
Which is everything in between the realm of collecting rocks, painting rocks,
shaping rocks.
making rocks into art.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool. But we'll get into all of that with all the technical mumbo-jumbo that we always have to explain because everything has to have jargon.
It really does. It's never just plain English. But, you know, it does sound a little bit better. You could be like, oh, yes, I am an amateur geologist instead of I'm a rock collector. Which, you know what? Still very valid because rocks are cool, right?
I gotta be honest,
sounds better.
When I was looking online at all the pictures of the rock, I was blown away by how pretty they looked.
It's crazy. What the earth can form is amazing.
We'll tone it down for our notes section. We don't want to give everything away.
Right.
We're doing just a little bit of behind the scenes talk here. This was one of the episodes that I pitched when I was pitching this podcast to the network.
Yeah.
I said everything from anime to collecting rocks, which made Lance stop and go like, what?
Yeah, I mean, because there's definitely enough information about this. There's definitely enough people who enjoy the different subcategories of collecting rocks or making things. So there's enough to make a podcast.
Oh, I have to be specific, by the way, rocks and minerals.
And minerals.
Because rocks can be separated into different categories and minerals can be separated into crystals and stuff.
And let us just say we definitely are not geology majors or we do not have any degree in geology. So if we say something slightly wrong, we apologize, but we're not experts.
And it would have been great if someone responded to my email, but nobody responded to my email this week.
You know, it's okay. It's just about getting the information and letting these folks know.
One could say I have fossilized bone to pick with them.
Oh my God.
And
You
yes,
just pulled that one out of nowhere.
Speaking of which, fossils are included in this. If you find fossils legally,
Yes, make sure it's legal or else you can get in a lot of trouble.
which we will get into all of the legalese stuff in a bit. We're going to read through our definition of collecting rocks.
Woo!
Which, by the way, out of all the hobbies we've talked about recently, probably the cheapest one, like
Yeah.
literally just looking down and picking up stuff that looks cool.
Yes, in the correct areas so you don't get in trouble.
Gray areas.
Yes. There's gray areas in a lot of things.
Can you read our Wikipedia description?
Of course. Amateur geology, or rock collecting, also referred as rock hounding in the United States and Canada, is the non-professional study and hobby of collecting rocks and minerals or fossil specimens from the natural environment. In Australia, New Zealand, and Cornwall, the activities of amateur geologists are called fossicking. Fossicking.
I left that in the description just because it sounded so interesting.
No, he left that in, so I would go, I don't know what that word, how to pronounce it.
For the TCG episode, we had a company name that we had to spend 15 minutes on how to pronounce.
Yeah, that was interesting. That is the difference between learning from someone else and learning from the internet is that really how you say that?
There's a point where you just have to say, screw it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say it. So this hobby can be separated into a couple different categories or sub-hobbies in our case. Geology, which would be more of the scientific part of this. If you're good with graphs, maybe you want a map of the different geology in your area.
If you really like reading those scientific journals, those peer-reviewed journals.
They're so hard to get through.
They are a little difficult unless you're really interested in them.
Oh my gosh. The geology aspect of this, I saw in one group that I was looking at that they had a map of their area and they figured out all the different rock layers and different rock types that were around their house.
Mm-hmm.
And they started moving it out to their town.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's interesting. So
that takes some passion.
I don't have the time it's a rock.
I think it's interesting, though.
Next up on our 3 categories are collecting. So this would be you are more interested in the looks and sometimes the prices because, whew.
I enjoy the looks.
They do look cool.
There are some very, very pretty rocks out there, or minerals, or fossils.
Or crystals.
Crystals.
Minerals. We already said minerals.
Minerals already. But there's also some properties that go along with a lot of minerals too, supposedly.
Mhm.
If I don't know the scientific, so if there are actual scientific things about this. But for example, a lot of I think it's Himalayan salt crystal things that people have gotten.
Yeah.
If they're real, if they're the legit ones, they can actually have some sort of effects on calming and stuff like that.
Which I would put that underneath our fourth meta category.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, look at that slide in of the metaphysics. There's a lot of, in recent times too, a lot of push for the kind of the supernatural portions of crystals and stuff.
Or spiritual.
Yeah, spiritual stuff. Let's just say if you want to look into that, there's a lot of passionate middle-aged men and women currently who will tell you all about that in their blogs.
And they definitely have a lot more knowledge than you or I.
They're also not scientific journals, so keep that in mind. Anyways, next up we have lapidary, and I'm going to keep that hesitation in that because that is not an easy thing to say.
It is not.
Lapidary, which is the act of shaping rocks artistically.
Did not know they had a name for that.
Yes, so most of the times when you look at those perfect crystal shapes, that doesn't form.
Unfortunately, it doesn't form in real life.
Yeah, you don't just find a diamond shaped like the stereotypical version of a diamond.
Oh, yes, it's right there. No.
Just
the princess
wall.
cut just happens.
What are some of the reasons you might start doing this?
You can be a very sciencey person who's very into the education around geology and different minerals and about how they're formed in general. You can also find minerals very pretty, like we talked about before. It could be the aesthetic that you're looking for. Maybe you want to decorate your house with some. Maybe you just want to say, hey, look at this awesome mineral I found.
Like we mentioned earlier, you believe in the spiritual versions of that, and that you think that you get into that part too, which is valid. I'm not trying to make fun of anyone, by the way.
No, it's literally us just being not as knowledgeable as someone in that field would be.
The only reason I would ever make fun of someone is if they were using it in lieu of medical stuff, such as prescriptions.
Yeah, that's probably for a different podcast.
I wonder if we should plug a different podcast.
Cognate Maro, would that be something?
No. I mean, would you make space for someone like that?
Oh, I see. We're plugging my podcast. Okay. So Making Space is a diversity podcast, if y'all are interested. Just about getting questions answered about socially sensitive topics. And I don't know, maybe that can be a topic, is the usage of spiritual minerals to help you feel better. I don't know.
You know what would be really cool on your podcast? I'll just sort of plug my idea.
Yeah.
I've always had a lot of friends who are Wiccan.
Wiccan. Oh, that's a good idea. I just have to find an expert for that.
I could probably hook you up with that.
That would be amazing. I was actually thinking about what kind of religious topics that I would have.
Minority religions. So, anyways, we can talk about that afterwards.
Yes, we can talk about that later.
We have some stuff to go on about. So, this third part's kind of important. So.
All right, so we want to make sure while you are starting this, you know the areas you can legally collect and sell minerals.
Oh,
careful with selling anything in the first place.
That's true, especially if you're not sure if you're the owner or not, because in the United States in particular, and this changes wildly depending on your country, your region, or your state even, mineral rights are a protection of people who own an area or a piece of land to say, let's say the government found oil on that person's land. Mm-hmm. The person can sell the oil or the mineral rights to the government, or they can do it themselves, and they legally own that stuff. So if you are renting, you do not legally own the mineral rights around you. But if you own the land, like around your house, you have a cabin up north, or anything like that, or south if you're up north and you're coming south like I did, you own the rights to the minerals on that place. But if you don't, you can't legally take that.
Right.
But
I mean, as long as you don't sell it, it's fine, right?
Right. Or no one's gonna be mad over you taking a single rock. I mean, don't do it. But, I mean, is someone really going to be mad about it?
We do not express any of the opinions of Tarleton Radio or Tarleton State University. This is our personal opinion. There are a lot of gray areas surrounding this. Usually it's with the involvement of money. So if you're not selling it, if it's just a hobby without any monetary or physical value, then you should be okay.
It's not gray. It's just not. It's not legal. It's not legal, but no one will. They legally could, but no one will come after you for a single rock. So
yeah,
just be careful.
Just don't try to sell any fossils that you don't own.
Yes, so especially fossils, which are kind of where it gets dicey because certain fossils can be more expensive, and if it was originally found in a place where the government owns that place, the government will be after you and will probably comprehend that fossil. So natural parks, big no-no.
Yes, you can't take any minerals, rocks, or pretty much anything out of a state park or anything like that.
Also, like rivers and stuff, they don't technically belong to you. It happens all the time, but they don't belong to you, so be careful.
Well, another reason you might start this hobby is because you really just enjoy being outside and you enjoy the natural world.
I think that's one of the biggest things about this.
Definitely.
Like nature hikes and stuff like that. Well, when we get into where you can do this, there's a lot of clubs that take you out on these field trips and stuff like that. There's a lot of clubs that will take you out on these like nature hikes, and they'll see different geological areas. They'll show us rocks and stuff. So that could be something. It's just the main mean of it is if you're looking for a nice way to be outside and be interested.
Right.
And
getting back in touch with nature is also something
we have lost.
I think we have lost a lot of it, although our generation has kind of gotten back to that.
As our generation sits in a padded room with air-conditioned vents blowing in my ear, which I have to clean up later.
So another reason, just like being in touch with nature, you can also be in touch with a very artistic side in which you can make things out of rocks. It's sculpting, creating art. Pretty nice.
If I were doing this, you know what I would do? Did you ever play the Crash Bandicoot games?
Mm-mm.
The Crash Bandicoot games, you got crystals as like special, like you completed, you go 100% of the game if you got all the crystals.
Okay.
So when you beat a level, I would make crystals like those. This is specifically for lapidary, so.
Yes.
Or lapidary.
I do enjoy like crystal jewelry as long as it's not too big, so I like that.
Yeah, it can be a bit gaudy.
Yeah, can be.
All right, let's move into our supernova facts, where we talk about. Supernova facts is our section where we kind of go deeper into history and different fun facts that we found online while we were researching. So, I found that rock collecting goes far back as humans have been picking things up and thinking they're pretty.
Basically being materialistic.
I mean, think about it. Where does our want for gold comes from? It's just because it's nice and it looks shiny.
It's shiny. And then, of course, you have the value associated with it.
Which doesn't make any sense because gold and diamonds are like some of the most like...
Yeah.
Well, gold's a little bit less so, but diamonds made of carbon in like 40% of everything. That number is not correct, but is made of carbon. So... Anyways, enough of my being mad that diamonds were a monopoly back in the day. Still are. But anyways, fast forward a couple millennia, and the act of amateur geology started with prospectors trying to find gems and gold in the West. So this is how our Western, like, amateur geology... Obviously, there was always geologists.
Right.
But the act of going out and actually just trying to be a regular person finding cool stuff kind of started.
Right, it wasn't for science or for the gaining of knowledge. I mean, it could be, but it was mostly for the finding these things and then maybe selling them.
It turns from an amateur to a professionalistic way of, I'm taking things from the earth and giving them to you.
I've done the work for you. Here it is. Pay me.
Pay me. There are a plethora of things to find in the earth. I mean, just to name some things off the top of our head, you got some things you want to mention?
Gems, geodes, meteorites, minerals,
The different types of rocks, igneous,
different types of rocks that I could definitely not name.
sedimentary. Someone didn't take their science credit or didn't pay attention in geology.
I took a health science.
Oh. Some other things, fossils. Fossils can be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think
Dinosaurs.
Yes. Okay, that's a good segue into fossils. Fossils are definitely one of the things that you can do during amateur geology, and as again, one of the legal things, make sure you legally can take this stuff.
Right.
Because otherwise, that belongs in a museum.
Right.
Can you name that movie that came from?
No.
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones? Which one?
It's the second one where he whips away one of the golden things and says, that belongs in a museum.
Yes. Oh.
But be aware that fossils are an educational thing, and you can sell them, and they probably will be worth money, but you can also sell them to museums.
Get a
stuff.
lawyer before you sell them.
Yeah, make sure that you have all your paperwork in order.
Mm-hmm.
We already talked about the issues and legality on the country. Mm-hmm. Oh, but let's talk about like positive things on the legal thing, like the legal side of things. Most of your local governments will gladly tell you the laws and stuff easily. You can call your local government center, and they can point out laws, and they can definitely show you the ropes of what you can and can't do.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to find sometimes online because you get drowned in information.
Mm-hmm.
Different things on Google and stuff like that. So even just giving your local government a call.
They're just sitting at their desks playing
Candy Crush. Not sponsored.
Candy Crush. Call us. Let's move over to the other side, moving over from our sciencey type of like geology and legalese to the artsy side.
Artsy side.
Lapidary is an artist, so they're actually called lapidaries or lapidarists.
Lapidarist
is an artist who forms stones, minerals, or gemstones into decorative items. So there's a specific version of if you say you're a gem cutter, that specifically specialized, I would say you specifically specialize in cutting like expensive gems. So diamonds.
Okay, but that's like a
rare
lapidary
stuff.
Is an umbrella term, would you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're a gem cutter, you basically just cut like expensive stuff. Because gem typically revolves around more rare or expensive, as we talked about with diamonds, not being that rare, but
more socially demanded versus
so
actually
that could be
expensive.
Underneath the term of gem.
Mm-hmm.
A lapidus will use 3 different terms. So there's tumbling, which is we all had rock tumblers as a kid. I feel like those messy, dirty things where you put the rocks in and then suddenly they came out super smooth. Yeah. This is how you polish and smooth the surface of a mineral. So you can rock tumble, your rocks that you find in your backyard, but you can also rock tumble different minerals and gems to get that smoothness out of them. Another thing that comes out of lapidary is carbotron cutting. So when you think of the stereotypical form of a gem, right? You think of the very angular, in going towards
very Steven Universe. No.
Yes. Yeah. This is known as faceting. Well,
Okay.
carbotron is when you round it out and make it kind of like I always refer to like it
Like
looks
marbles,
like it looks like a dinosaur egg.
Oh, okay.
Because minerals kind of when you have a diamond, it will go thinner towards one part. They'll look more like a dinosaur egg rather than
like an oval.
Yeah, more of an oval, and you'll see that sometimes on jewelry where it's more oval than
very smooth versus
angular,
quote unquote rustic.
So when you facet, this is cutting the stone to resemble stereotypically what we think of a diamond or a gem looks like. But this doesn't just refer to gems or the more see-through stuff. You can do this on different rocks and stuff. All of these techniques require a grinder or some sort of rotary.
A rotary?
So this is when you take those handheld rotary tools and you'll cut part of it off.
Okay.
And all of these materials can be found Amazon.
We are also not sponsored by
But
them.
if Amazon, please, I know you are a $1 trillion company.
If you wanted to, you could.
I need something to buy all my expensive minerals with. All right, we're gonna move away from supernova facts to our note-taking section. I'll let you take over.
Okay, so I would say I like this hobby. I know it has a stigma of, oh, it's just rock collecting. That's it was that stigma, a very nerdy thing that no one wants to look at all these rocks and everything, right? But I think it's pretty cool. And something I wanted to add to more of the lapidary side of amateur geology is a phenomenon that started probably when I was in high school. So around 2013, 2014, that kind of thing. People started painting rocks. Usually they would paint messages or little figures on them, and they would hide them places, and then other people would try and go and find them.
So when I had heard about this and I was looking at the paper, I thought this was very similar to a different hobby, which we might cover.
Right.
This hobby is a little bit more specialized, so maybe not, but geocaching.
Yes, I think it's very similar to geocaching in that it's like a scavenger hunt without having to go to some place and sign up for a scavenger hunt. You just try to find these rocks, and then a lot of the times people will put their Instagram, Facebook, whatever tags on the back of the rocks, and that way you can be like, oh, you're in touch with someone now.
This is funny. One of the things that up north they do, I don't know if they do down here in Texas, but this is an online podcast, so it's everywhere.
Yes.
So when I was in high school, or for other countries that'd be called primary school or secondary school, or when you're 14 to 18 going to school in that area, we had rocks, like big, boulder-sized rocks outside of our school. So that, let's say we had an away game come here, so it was another school coming to our school to play a sports thing. They didn't graffiti the school, it was a graffiti rock.
Oh, I see. So it was encouraged?
It was
to graffiti the rock?
To graffiti the rock, because that's why it was there.
Oh, I see.
So you'd have an away game come over, and then they would be full of, like, the other teams, like, the graffiti, and of course, like, they tried to say don't write profane things on it, but they always did. But it would always be like this thing of this rock had literal like inches of paint on it because it had been painted on so many times. A lot of places up north have them.
That is really cool.
And it made it so that no one graffitied the school. Like none of our schools have graffiti on them, because why do that?
When you can do that, right?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And it turned into this thing where now different people in the school were trying to do different things, and then other people, like it turned into like this fun little rivalry between the school itself.
Yeah, it's about building community through a creative process.
And I think that's a good point, that all of these hobbies that we talk about are about joining communities.
Right. I mean, they can be individual if you're more of an introvert, but it's nice to be able to have a commonality between peers.
Yeah, and that's one of the notes I had on this. Like, I kind of say this to every hobby, but it just surprises me. And there's a lot of people that exist in this world.
True.
How many people are actually involved in this? Like, one of the things that I was worried about, especially on this, was like, oh, where am I supposed to find, like, for our star coordinates section, where am I supposed to find areas for people to gather for this? This doesn't seem like something that this would happen. I was shocked. Just here in Texas, we have 2 clubs almost in the same city. They're all over the place, and there's like different geology clubs and universities that are very open to the public.
Right.
And there's shows all over the place, and it's just crazy the amount of people that surprised me that were in this. Especially
universities. I know Tarleton is very open for people to come in and learn. And I know our geology department is pretty, like, I don't have I have personal experience a little bit, but I know they're really nice and really open to talking. They always do like fundraisers and everything, and it's a good way to just talk with them and support that.
They had a bake sale recently, the geology sale.
The Valentine's Day bake sale, they do it every year.
It's so
and
good.
They always have these like little dinosaur bags.
It's so good.
It's great.
That's one of my notes, by the way, the fossil stuff. I've always loved fossils. Like, can you imagine being like the kid inside of you coming out of you when you finally found like a fossil on the ground?
Yes.
That would be so cool.
It's amazing.
And it's so easy to do this. I believe that all you technically need for this hobby is a geologist pick, which you can find one on Amazon for $10, which we'll talk about prices later. But just to have the ease of access for this, and if you
the natural world's all around us.
Yeah, and if you feel like you can't find anywhere legally, these clubs and these people will help you find. It's just these communities are so cool, and watching them from the outside when most people don't even pay attention to them has been a blast, and I've been enjoying this podcast so far.
I would have never thought to like do research on rock collecting or car collecting, anything like that, but it's amazing to just hear about it.
I mean, I'm stoked when I look online and I see a bunch of like active forums and Facebook groups and stuff. One of the cool things I found online though for this is, oh my gosh, the pictures.
The photography.
Which we are covering photography,
yes.
Spoiler, on another one. It was supposed to be this one, but then when I was actually looking online at photography hobby sites, I found a lot of photography of rocks. And then I was just like, I wanted to do an episode on rock collecting, which I didn't have down, so I made an executive decision to change the episode, and Cole agreed with me.
Yeah.
So MINDAT, which is one of the largest mineral databases, is run by a university called Hudson Institute of Mineralogy.
It's a tongue twister. It's all right.
I'm glad that they changed it to MINDAT for their website, because that is much easier to say. But even as I look at the website right now, they have a tour bus, a mineral tour bus.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Wow, France, Germany, and Poland.
Yeah. That is ridiculous. I love to travel, so that's definitely one thing.
Oh, yeah. So if you like to travel, too, I mean, if you want to be in touch with nature and you want to travel, go for it. Find a lot of rocks.
Another thing we can put in the notes, this is a great way to go explore the world. Like, even your local world, but, like, let's say you wanted to see some of the... I know there's crazy rock formations in Wyoming, or... Arizona or New Mexico.
Even close to us, like Glen Rose.
Right? What's the mountain that's over? It's not a mountain, but they call it Mount something.
I don't know.
You see it, like you drive over it when you go through Glen Rose. Just stuff like that. If you just look a little bit closer at the stuff we kind of just glance by every day, it's pretty cool what you might find. So, what's next?
Star coordinates. Where do you find...
Beep, 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 beep,
oh my...
beep, 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 beep.
Beep, 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 beep.
I'm just imagining star coordinates.
Yes.
Located. Computer. Go to hyperdrive.
Oh, God. All right, so star coordinates, this is going to be about where you can find other people. We've kind of mentioned this already, but other people who like rocks or how to get into... that sort of group. Yeah,
so this is where you can either find stuff online or where you can find other people. Because I added the online part originally. Originally, this part, when we were making this podcast, wow, we're getting a lot of behind the scenes on the podcast today. Originally, when I made this podcast, I was thinking that this segment where we always talk about like where you can go would just be like in-person stuff.
Right.
But then I outcast all the people who maybe don't like other people. So,
yeah, maybe better socially via online chat.
Well, that's how we are today. But that does help some people with some social anxiety stuff.
Yeah.
So what's the first place they can go?
You can go to rock clubs. Clubs are everything, guys. And it's not just for when you're in school, but outside of school, too.
Rock clubs.
Yes, rock clubs.
Best thing ever. And when I'm looking online at these rock clubs, because they post their pictures of their weekly meets, I thought it would just be a bunch of old people. It's not. There's some younger people doing this, so it's pretty diverse, it seems.
Yeah, nice.
Because anyone can do it. Tell me more about rock clubs.
Okay, so They have monthly or weekly meetings. Most of them have a newsletter. A lot of clubs, they have a newsletter that's released about with a regular schedule and what's happening around geology at the time.
If there's any meets or if there's any
Right.
like tours going on. Or
Exactly. Like that tour bus probably was on a
newsletter
somewhere.
before they put a banner on it. Probably have to recoup their costs for being in France and Germany.
Right?
Oh,
Wow.
sounds amazing. But also they'll tell you about different areas of where you can go. Like we have the crystal caves around us.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll tell you if there's sales on tickets for stuff like that, or the works of keeping you informed as a
Right.
rock head.
No. He worked it in. I didn't think he would work it in.
We were thinking about puns before the podcast, and I said stop being a rockhead, and she said no, that could be taken wrong in some ways, and I was just like fine. But I worked it in. I worked it in.
Okay, moving on. So it's another good way to learn from others about different techniques and other areas of interest that you might find. Like if you have one area, you can always learn about other people's special interests.
And a lot of these guys do have membership fees, but they probably aren't as expensive as you're thinking. Though it should be mentioned that these clubs sometimes have membership fees, which they look like they're about $50 a year, which, I mean, is like $5 a month.
Yeah, that's not very much for a membership fee.
Mm-mm.
It's really not.
I mean, I think about some fraternities and sororities because we're in college and that's what we're around, and they're like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, and that's not the whole year. That's a semester.
Yeah, and I think about like some of the car clubs we talked about in the car episode, which were, again, hundreds of dollars sometimes,
Right.
depending on the car, which you can go watch. Self-plug, listen.
Yeah, go
to
watch.
the car
Go
episode.
listen. Not watch. It's yes.
I mean, they can watch the waveform as it goes across the screen.
Like we do on a regular basis.
What else can they do to find other people?
All right, so if you're interested in art or the lapidary side of these rock collecting or amateur geology, you can go to meets for them, learn new ways of working with rocks and minerals, and trade and buy different artistic pieces. So that's a really cool way.
That is kind of cool. What I found online is a lot of the times there will be like separate geology groups
Mm-hmm.
and separate lapidary groups.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, and this probably more often than not, they're combined into like a similar thing.
Right.
So if you're looking at a group and it says geology, it might have lapidary included. So make sure you're researching your groups.
Yeah, definitely be open to talking with them because just like anyone in any hobby, they're really passionate about this thing and I'm sure they would enjoy talking about it with you.
Yeah, and the art meet groups are, if you find one that's specifically for the artistic part, and I should include that like different art clubs will also include this. They just won't be specifically about the geology.
Mm-hmm.
They'll focus on artistic ways to include. You can ask them about different techniques, which you can just change to include your minerals in them. So you can also trade and buy different artistic pieces / minerals from other people in both these groups.
I am always intrigued by trading because, I mean, with no money involved, it's just like, oh, this might be of equal value to that. Can I have that instead? You know?
Or think about it like this. It might not even be the value sense. It might be the, oh, I don't have this.
Yeah.
And it could be, I could have something that's a little bit more expensive than this.
But I don't really want that one.
Yeah, so I'm willing to trade the extra money away. Money when money's not involved, but the extra worth
value,
for it's called down trading. You down trade, which means you take something that's worth more and trade it for something that's worth less, but it's because you don't have it and you can't find it or something like that, or it's just convenience fee or something like that. And then there's up trading, which is just the opposite of trading something that's worth less
for something worth more.
But generally it will be around the same value, not too far apart. Next up, where can we find stuff online? Amazon. Our world is ruled by Skynet, which is named Amazon.
Yeah. But I mean, there's always Facebook groups online. Have you seen that commercial lately about Facebook? Facebook literally made a commercial about joining Facebook groups.
Yeah, I saw that.
I love that commercial.
I saw it on a YouTube ad, actually.
Right? Like, I feel like that's our podcast, though. It's just like groups everywhere.
Groups. All
Just
of these
find
groups. Yeah, some of these groups are pretty large, too, like on the Facebook groups. I mean, it's really easy to just click join a group and then just kind of look at stuff occasionally. So if you just want to like dip your toes in, Facebook is obviously
join a group.
The gateway to a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want the gateway to buying things,
Right. If you got the money.
Amazon, call me up.
Oh my God.
I'm repping you. But I mean, there's a lot of different like amateur geology places that you can buy from, and if you don't like Amazon for whatever reason, eBay or these specific
Craigslist, I don't know.
these niche like
Right.
websites.
Independent sellers.
Right. And then I mentioned this earlier, but mendot.org is the best place to look for mass information galleries and it has large directories of different clubs, vendors, people, and more.
And that's spelled MINDAT.org. If you're curious.
And like I said, they're held by the Hudson Institute of Mineralogy.
Mineralogy.
That is a lot of L in one sentence.
Yeah.
And that will be where you can find like different areas you can do your amateur geology in. They will have different techniques and all the information you could ever want about your minerals, which moves nicely into how much do minerals cost?
Rocket fuel.
Rocket fuel. How much fuel is in your rocket?
Not much.
Not much. Me neither.
All right. So minerals have there's a vast difference between prices depending on what type they are.
And who you're buying it from.
And who you're buying it from, how much they think it's worth versus you do.
Right. A lot of these people are sometimes selling, like, it can be hard to get when you're online, like, the proportion of, like, how big something is.
Right.
Sometimes you'll be, like, looking at something and be, oh, that's not that big. Why does it cost $5,000? But then they have another picture of them standing next to it. It's like
huge.
It's huge. And then you'll be looking at something and being like, that's giant. And then it's like the size of someone's pinky.
Oh yeah, I was actually following a dog's Instagram.
Oh
right?
Really?
And it was a poodle, and I thought it was a standard poodle, which is a decent size, up to your knee, thigh. And it was actually a toy poodle. They finally had a size difference. And I was like, whoa.
It's so small.
It's a toy poodle? What? Okay. Yeah, that was just something.
You get back onto the adorable little rock.
Yes. If you want to follow those rocks
poodles. I'm gonna make a Lapardy art of a poodle out of gems.
Just paint some stuff on there.
But you can find some for like $1.
Yeah.
All the way up to thousands of dollars.
I mean, you can also, if you have the land with the minerals on it, you can also just
sell them
or sell them. So
this goes for you as well as a person in this hobby. This can actually turn into maybe an investment, like your time into money. Like, obviously, this I don't think you could ever do enough or have enough to make this a job, which is why it's called amateur geology.
Right.
But you could find some really good finds in your area, and of course be safe if you're going deep into the ground. Know what you're doing, make sure you're researched, make sure you've talked to an expert. But some of the stuff looks so cool. I'm thinking about the minerals that really stand out to me are the ones that look like they're squares, and I learned that they crystallize, like they grow like that. But of course, the ones that I was looking at was like $2,000. So,
ooh.
But then you think of anything like an inexpensive geode. That might be a good place to start. It costs like $2 on eBay or Amazon, and
if you don't want to go out and legally find one yourself.
That's where that pick comes involved, because geodes look like a regular rock on the outside, and you have to crack them open. So make sure you get a pick. Which, talking about a pick, they cost about $10. I've found some places. Sometimes they're more expensive because I'm sure because they're just a big metal hammer with a kind of a more pointed side.
End,
they're not sharp, but just more pointed side, so you can break into the rocks. It's just a big piece of metal, so it can be kind of expensive. And of course, you pay for what you get. So if you're getting one of the cheaper ones, but that's that's for the kind of the sciencey part of that. I mean, if you're out in the field, that's kind of all you need.
Yeah.
That and a good pair of eyes, which I don't have.
Yeah, we're both wearing glasses right now.
Yeah, I could take off my glasses right. I couldn't read this script. How are the prices looking for the Laprity materials, though?
Well, it's some higher quality kits can be around $400.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, this takes grinders and like actual pretty nifty tools. So
yes, it can be a little bit more expensive in the buy-in, but it's pretty fun.
I mean, for an art perspective, you can make art a job.
Oh yeah, you can definitely do that.
Etsy.
Yeah, Etsy.
That's another good website I should have put into. You can buy lapidary arts on Etsy. It's probably a big place to find those.
Of course, beginner kits can cost under $50. Rock tumblers can cost anywhere from $50 to $100. But that's just depending on your quality here.
And on top of that, you have to put materials. So rock tumblers use water and then like stuff in the water to polish it. And I believe it's like kind of like a sanding effect where the stuff in the water is tumbling past it.
So there are materials you will have to replace a couple times if you're going to use it quite often.
Yeah, and then if you use it quite often, you also have to take into account your polish, what you're looking for. So there's different types of stuff. So there will be like these refillable pellets that you put into your water. And then make sure you're keeping all of that in mind. But to finish off this episode, our initial buy-in is $10.
$10 bucks.
$10 because in my mind for this hobby, yes, the art part can be expensive if you're going for like a specific feel. You're trying to facet things. You're trying to make it feel like a diamond.
Yes.
Shine bright like a diamond.
Oh my god. No.
You killed me last time with your puns. I kill you this time with my puns. But for this, I mean, if you're going to go out and find rocks, it just takes that one hammer to break open your geodes and to kind of dig into the earth to find stuff that's maybe underground a little bit. You can use that to shape rocks. So for gems in particular, you can find different ways online with just your regular in-house stuff to shape those. So there's different ways you can do it without having to purchase a $400 grinder. So, but if you ever reach to the point where you are getting good at it and you want to sell stuff online, maybe think of it as like an investment. So that's the fun thing about hobbies. Like even the most geeky hobbies nowadays can turn into a profession. So as I'm still salty about people get to play Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh as their job.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, watch our last episode on TCGs.
Yeah. All right, that's it for this episode, guys, of Planetary Overload. Thanks for listening.
Come back next time.
This has been a Tarleton Radio Network podcast with production from AJ Heyer and Taylor Welch. Find more great shows by searching Tarleton Radio Network wherever you get your podcasts.